that in medieval times that pies were called coffins and that they were used to transport meat. No one ate the crust, it just served as a basket. However, over time, Europeans started adding in spices and fruit to these meat. And when they brought them over to America, they just used fruit instead of the meat. And this is what led to the apple pie we know today. This recipe that I'm going to show you has been passed down from my grandmother and was one of my favorite things to make with her. I will first go over the materials and ingredients that I need, and then I will cover all the steps. To begin, you'll need the following materials: a fork, a couple of mixing bowls, a rolling pin, parchment paper, measuring spoons, measuring cups, a knife preferably sharp, a peeler, a cutting board, and then you'll need the following ingredients: 5 to 7 apples, I use Granny Smith, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of salt, a cup of sugar, 2 3/4 a cup of flour, 1/4 a cup of water, 3/4 a cup of shortening, and 1/3 a cup of butter. Now that we have our ingredients, we can begin making the pie. The first step is to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. After you've done that, you can head over to your counter space and you're going to add 1 2/3 a cup of flour to your bowl. Now, be careful with this flour. You want to measure it out perfectly. I suggest using a butter knife and using the flat end of the butter knife. Be careful to use the flat, and just measuring it out smoothly like this. And now 2/3. After you've added 1 2/3 cup of flour to your bowl, you can add a teaspoon of salt. And after that, I suggest taking a fork and kind of mixing it around so the salt gets in the flour. After that, in another mixing bowl, we're going to add 1/3 a cup of flour, our 1/3 cup, and the water to make a paste. And then we're going to add our 1/4 cup of water. Now this makes a paste, and this is what's going to make the crust sticky and flaky. So we're going to take our fork again and just kind of mix this around. Now, after we've done making the paste, we're going to take our shortening, our Crisco, and we're going to cut it into little pieces like this. And we're going to add it to our flour mixture that we made before. After you've added all the shortening in chunks, you're going to add the paste. So after you add that, you're going to take this fork and you're going to smash it like this. I usually go around and just kind of spin the bowl. Make sure to get all that paste and that shortening. And you're just going to continue to get it until it'll eventually stick up into a ball. After you've mixed the crust, it's going to look like this. I've just put it into a ball like this. You can see. And now you're going to roll it into the crust. Now how you do this, you take 2 pieces of parchment paper. You're going to sprinkle some flour over the parchment paper first so the dough doesn't stick to it. So you're going to put the dough like this, kind of spread it out with your hands just a little bit. Now you're going to put some flour over the dough too, so when I put the top one on, it won't stick to that. So now I'm going to put this over the top of it, kind of smush it down a little bit more. And I'm going to take the rolling pin and we're going to roll it out into a thin crust. After you've rolled that out, you're going to carefully remove the parchment paper and put this on the pie pan. You're just going to flip it over kind of fast because it's going to be falling. And then you're going to carefully remove, try not to tear it or put any holes in the pie crust. And it will end up like so. Now, depending on whether you want this pie to be pretty or not, you can do several things around the edge. Well, first you're going to try to even out and get those tears away so that the juices won't leak over. And then you're going to tear off the excess crust all around the edges. And then you can do, to make it look a little better, you can start molding it, like doing this, making like little like ripples and indentions in it, just to make it look a little cleaner. You don't have to though, it'll still taste the same. After your pie crust looks like this, you can start with the apples. Now, you're going to take an apple, come over to the sink, you're going to wash it of course, just scrub it a little bit, and then you're going to take your peeler. Some people use knives to peel their apples. I like to use a potato peeler, I think it goes by a lot easier. But if you don't have that, feel free to use a knife. And you're just going to peel it little by little. After you're done with that, give it another quick rinse and do more. After you have peeled all your apples, it's time to cut them. First, you take your sharp knife, do this. I like to cut it into fourths. You can do it various amounts of ways, but I cut it into fourths first. And then you're going to want to core the apples, which means taking out the seeds and the hard part in the middle, and you're just going to do it like that. Just slowly curving the knife around so you get the nasty stuff out in the middle. Core the apples, you're going to want to cut them into thin slices. The thinner the better. That'll help them be softer when the juices flow. So you're going to hold your hand like this so you won't cut yourself. You're going to hold the knife like this, point down, and just slowly get very thin slices like this. Like I said, the thinner the better. That'll really make them soft when the juices start boiling in the oven. After you have enough apples to fill the pie, you're going to start with the top. Now, we're doing a crumb top today. You can also do a crust like this on the top that just like layers over. Now, first I'm going to start with a half a cup of sugar, a little bit more for good measure, and then a teaspoon of cinnamon. You're just going to mix this up real quick, and this is just going to go on the top of the apples, and it's going to, when the apples are in the oven and start getting hot and the juices are flowing, this is going to mix in with them and like make the apples nice and flavorful. Now, after you have this all mixed, it's going to be this nice little light brown color. You're going to set that aside for later. In another bowl, you're going to add 3/4 a cup of flour. So you're going to use this half. Make sure to smooth it out again. And then you're going to give another 1/4. So after you've done that, now you're going to add sugar. And you're going to add a half a cup of sugar. So here's our half again. 1/3 cup of butter. This is 1/3 cup. I've let it sit at room temperature for a while so it's softened, as you can see. You're going to cut this butter into chunks, just so it'll be easy to mix like before with the shortening. And this is going to create the nice little crumb top that we're going to have. Now you're going to take the fork and you're going to do exactly what we did before with the shortening. You're just going to keep smashing that butter and mixing it into the sugar and the flour and the cinnamon until it comes into little crumb-like pieces. So after the mixture looks like this, just into pieces, little crumbs like that, you're going to start putting your ingredients together. First, you're going to add the apples, and it's going to fill up the whole bowl, and it's going to mound up a little bit too as well. And then like that. So after that, you're going to take the cinnamon sugar mixture and you're just going to slowly kind of spread that all over. So after that's done, you're going to do the same thing with the crumb top. You're just going to slowly add it evenly on top of the pie. Here it goes. We're going to put it in the oven. Usually around the middle of the oven is fine. And we're just going to put it right in the middle. And then I want to set the timer for 40 minutes. Baking, this is what the pie should look like. The crumbs should be a perfect golden brown. So in conclusion, today we have learned how to make my grandma's favorite apple pie. I recommend eating it warmed up with a scoop of ice cream.